The Israeli military has announced it began, quote, focused ground operations in southern Lebanon. It comes as fighting has intensified between Israeli forces and Hezbollah around the southern Lebanese town of Khiam. The town sits on high ground, just a few kilometers from the Israeli border and the Litani River, giving it a commanding view over northern Israel and nearby Lebanese plains. Khiam's strategic position has long been seen as a gateway to southern Lebanon. Israel and Hezbollah have been exchanging fire for more than 10 days following the killing of Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. And now Ian Parmeter is research scholar at the Centre for Arab and Islamic Studies at the Australian National University. He's also a former Australian ambassador to Lebanon. He joins us now from Canberra. Good to have you with us. So, is this a pivotal moment in terms of the Israeli operations in Lebanon?
I think what Israel is trying to do is really put as much pressure as it can on the Lebanese government to disarm Hezbollah, to isolate Hezbollah and to prevent Hezbollah becoming essentially an aggressive part of the war that Israel is waging against Iran. We know that the relationship between Hezbollah and Iran is extremely close, and Iran's tactics in dealing with Israel have always been to try to use Hezbollah to put pressure on Israel without necessarily having Israel attack Iran. But it's most important now for Israel that it actually prevent Hezbollah from becoming part of the war, because that will make its prosecution of the war against Iran at this point very difficult. The other aspect, I think, is that we have an Israeli election coming up, and Netanyahu will be wanting to show that, as Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel, will be wanting to show that he is mindful of the security of Israelis living in northern Israel, who are, of course, at risk of rocket and drone and missile attacks from Hezbollah. So I think there are a few factors involved in what Israel is doing at the moment.
No matter how much pressure Israel puts on the Lebanese government, do you really see a prospect of that strategy working? You've been an ambassador to Lebanon. I'm sure you understand how the Lebanese government is really the face of the different confessional sects within the country, right?
Exactly. I think you're absolutely right that the potential for the Lebanese government itself to disarm Hezbollah and essentially to bring Hezbollah under some sort of overall Lebanese reign, Lebanese leash, if you like, is very limited. It's a very strong organization. Hezbollah, the Shia, are the largest sect within Lebanon, and they are certainly very fired up at this point over what's happening in Iran. I think, as I mentioned before, a large part of this is not necessarily to be able to completely disarm and destroy Hezbollah, but to limit any part of any role that Hezbollah is able to play in the war, and particularly for Lebanon, for Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to show that he is mindful of the situation of Israelis in northern Lebanon. So we'll see how that works out. But you are quite right. The ability of the Lebanese government over many years that I've been watching events in Lebanon to control Hezbollah has been extremely limited.
To broaden things out, I mean, what happens in Lebanon, is it tied to a greater degree on what happens in the bigger conflict going on, the US and Israeli attacks on Iran, and with the US now calling for help, even threatening NATO allies? Does that look to you like the momentum is shifting in this conflict and not in the favor of the US and Israel?
I think it's probably too early to say that, just my opinion at the moment. But I think it is true, as a 19th century German military analyst once said, no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy. And this is what the United States and Israel have found with starting a war in Iran. I don't think they were prepared for Iran to start striking civilian infrastructure in the Gulf Cooperation Council states, or for that matter, for Iran to put enormous pressure on traffic going through the Straits of Hormuz. And that's something
Why not,
which...
Ian? Why not? I mean,
said,
these messages were pretty well telegraphed in advance by the Iranians that should the US and Israel launch, what they say and what the UN says as well, UN figures call an illegal attack on Iran, that's exactly what they would do. Why didn't they see that coming?
Well, that is a very good question. And I think a lot of Americans who will start to be paying a lot more money for per gallon of petrol are going to be asking the same sorts of questions. But it's as surprising as it seems, they didn't appear to have a plan for keeping the Strait of Hormuz unblocked. They've talked generally in terms of sending escort vessels, which of course was done during the Iran-Iraq War back in the 1980s. But they seem to have abandoned that and decided that it was simply too hard, and now putting a lot of pressure on NATO countries, and I would think potentially including Australia at some point, to be part of an international naval force that will keep the Strait of Hormuz open, shows that I don't think the Americans had actually planned for that. Why is a very good question. And there have been, in what I've been reading, there has been a sense that a lot of the decisions related to American involvement in this war were taken without a great deal of thought for where the eventual problems could occur.
All right, it's good to get your thoughts on that. Ian Parmeter, a research scholar at the Centre for Arab and Islamic Studies at the Australian National University.